Have you ever heard the phrase, less is more, from Dutch architect Mies van der Rohe? What does a Dutch architect have to do with guitar? A lot. Coming right up. One of my biggest guitar idols when I was growing up was Steve Howe of Yes. I watched Yes songs and was just amazed at how easily and quickly he could move up and down the neck, just commanding that fretboard. I thought, man, he must see everything. But maybe, just maybe, he wasn't seeing more. Maybe he was seeing less. I know that sounds crazy, but when you think about it, it actually makes some sense. When you focus on a few vital things, you're actually able to see ideas much more clearly. It works for athletes. Why not for guitar? Here's the sort of thing that I mean. So how do we get there? One way is to use connecting licks. Now I talked about that previously in another video. I'll link at the end of this video so you can check that out at the end. But there's another way too, and this is a chordal idea. It's so simple you can learn to see it and apply it in almost no time. So let's check that out, starting with something you probably already know. Here's one standard bar chord with the root, the note that names the chord, on the A string. And here's another standard bar chord. This one's a minor, also with the root on the A string. As I said, you probably already know that, but it's not quite what we're after. We're after something simpler. What is that simple chord? It's called a partial chord, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You take a full chord, and you envision just a piece of that chord. Now, you don't have to use the D, G, and B strings, although those are great choices. We're going to choose some other strings when we do the Steve Howe lick later. Here's another example, a minor partial chord. So that was easy, but why the heck would you want to do that anyway? Well, here's one reason. It's a heck of a lot easier to play very quickly. Check out this R&B lick. Now, you might try playing that with full bar chords, but it'd be very difficult. That's hard to play really fast, but this, not hard at all. And it sounds great. A second reason, and this is a big one, is that once you have a few of these partial chord shapes under your belt and you really can see them, you can move anywhere on the fretboard almost instantaneously. It's a lot easier than carrying around big scale patterns because you've got less to remember. You can focus on just a couple things and move very, very quickly. There are even more reasons to love partial chords, but you're seeing the power, I'm sure. Now, don't make the mistake of thinking just because you understand it theoretically that you can play it. I know, it's just a piece of a chord that you already know, so it should be pretty easy, but somehow it's not. You gotta practice it. So in that spirit, let's go through that Steve Howe lick that I did in the beginning, or Steve Howe style lick, and let's see if we can understand it using partial chords. So here's the lick slowly. Now, instead of tabbing it, let's understand it through partial chords. It's a lick over a B7 chord. So here are 3 B7s. And now here are the partial chords that we're going to make from those 3 B7 chords. So here's the lick using those partial chords. But we can make it even simpler. We can simplify even more by seeing only the top and bottom notes of each partial chord. A partial of the partial chord, if you will. So now the lick becomes very easy to see and to play. And I know a few of you are out there saying, hey, those are double stop sixths, and so they are. But you see how partial chords kind of just is one thing that captures all of that. And if you can see those little partial chords, you can see those double stops too. Now, isn't that more satisfying than just learning the lick from the tab? I think it is. Now you can create your own licks from these partial chords. It can be a big frustration for guitarists. We learn scales, but it's not enough to give us the confidence to solo and make music from it. Let's change that today. When we guitarists start soloing, we learn scales. Usually it's this one. Well, probably the A minor pentatonic, not the C minor pentatonic, but that same box shape. And it's great. We can learn some fantastic licks with it, but when it comes time to solo, we either freeze or just kind of run up and down the scale. And that's not soloing. It's not really music. So what can we do? A lot of players think they just need to learn more before they can really play. That was me. I thought if I just learned the minor pentatonic all over the neck, or if I also learned the major pentatonic all over the neck, or if I learned my major scales all over the neck, then I'd know what to do. But you know, it didn't work that way. I just ran different scales up and down the neck. But here's something that does really work to help you use what you know to make real music when you solo. It's a huge confidence builder, and it's super simple too. It's not easy, but it is simple. Anyone can do it, and it's fun. Instead of more scales, more notes, we'll use fewer notes instead. That's right, we'll restrict ourselves to only those 5 notes, which isn't as easy as it seems. Even harder would be 3, but let's stick to 5 for now. I'll show you how to extend the exercise at the end of this lesson. But we'll allow ourselves to put in any phrasing elements, any bends, any slides, any vibrato, and of course, any dynamics, any loud and soft. Finally, we'll play this over a slow blues. Now, it works with any progression, but slow blues is great because you can hear all the changes and it forces you to deal with all that space. Now, this seems easy, but it's not, because it forces you to deal with things that theory and scale patterns don't. How to lock in with the timing, which bends work and which bends don't, how to listen for the changes and play through them. In short, how to say something with just a few ingredients. And you don't have big scale runs to hide behind, so it can be difficult. But it's fun too, and it gives you the confidence that you can come up with something to say, even with just a few notes. Here's a quick demo, but remember, at the end, I'll show you how to extend this technique to make it even more powerful. It's a great theory-free way to help you build confidence. But if you really want to build up your intuition and confidence, click here, because I show you how to extend it to other chord progressions and other places on the neck too. Hey gang, a long time ago I remember seeing the great Danny Gatton in a video called Strictly Rhythm. He did this thing right off the bat in lesson 1 called the 2-note wonder. Totally blew me away. We're going to check it out coming right up. Before his untimely death in 1994, Danny Gatton was probably the best guitarist that you never heard of. He was known as the Telemaster, the world's greatest unknown guitarist, and also as the Humbler for his ability to beat other guitarists in head-cutting duels. He was just an amazing player, and if you haven't heard him, you really ought to check him out. The video starts out with this blues jam, and it just sounds awesome. He's playing chords all over the place. And afterward, he explains what he's doing, and he says, I call it the little two-note wonder, a little thing that fits everything. I had to know what it was. The problem was that it was a borrowed VHS tape without tabs, so the quality wasn't there, and it had nothing to go on. And he was playing it on the nuttiest Telecaster that you ever saw. It was all pearloid, including the fretboard, so it was really hard to see anything. But he was playing a G blues, and he did mention the notes F and B. So let's have a look. Here are B and F, and here's a full G7 chord. So what are the B and the F notes? Well, if G is the 1, then we have B as the 3rd, D as the 5th, and F as the flatted 7th. Let's fill in the rest of the notes here. So what we're doing here is we're just playing these 2 notes for the G. Wait, we only play 2 notes and we get the G7 chord? How does that work? Well, I'm going to show you in a little bit with a demo, and I'm going to show you it totally works. But before we go there, let's cover the 4 chord and the 5 chord in the G blues, the C7 and the D7, and here's where the real magic comes in. All right, here's a C7 chord. Now check this out. If we move the 2 notes from the G7 down exactly 1 fret, we match on the C7. But what are those notes? Let's see. C is the 1st, E is the 3rd, G is the 5th, and B flat is the flatted 7th. Amazing, we get the same 3 and 7 again. Now the strings are reversed, but again, it's the 3 and the 7 of the C7 chord. And of course, the D7 works exactly the same way. Let's have a look. All right, here is the D7 chord. The D is the 1st, the F sharp is the 3rd, the A is the 5th, the C is the flatted 7th. Now let's take that G7 2-note wonder and move it up 1 fret. Voila, you've got the D7 2-note wonder. Amazingly simple. So that's it for the basics of the 2-note wonder. You start on a G for the G7. You move down just 1 fret, exactly same shape for the C7. And then for the D7, you move up exactly 1 fret and keep the same shape. Let's see how it works on a basic 12-bar blues. See what I mean? Magic. Fits right in the pocket, totally appropriate for the song. Sure, it's a bit simple, but you can see there's scope for jazzing it up a bit and adding different things. More on that later. First, let's talk about why it works. There's no root in the chord. There's no G. How the heck does that work? Well, here's the idea. There's other musicians in the band, and not playing the G allows them to be a little bit more free as well, and it opens up the mix a little bit more. Being able to play parts of a chord, not the whole thing, is really important because it helps to keep everything from getting muddy. That's the first thing. The other question is, why are we playing the 3rd and the flatted 7th? The 3rd is the note that helps determine whether the chord is a major or the minor, so it's really important. And the flatted 7th, well, that's really the spice in the blues. It's the tension note that puts everything together, it gives blues its little edge. And believe it or not, the trick gets even better. Let's have a look when we choose the root of the G as being on the A string instead of the E string. Here's the G7, and the 3rd and the flatted 7th. And here's the C7. And now here's the D7 chord. So you see the 2-note wonder stays on the same strings, the D and the G strings. We just move the whole thing up a bit, and it can give our play some variety. Let's check it out. there's so much more you can do with this. You can add notes to the chords like I was doing a little bit in the last example. You can play a jazz blues with ease, and you can even use it as the backbone of your soloing. The beauty of the two-note wonder is that it's simple. So very simple. And you know, the key to getting a lot better at guitar is to master simple things. You got this. Hey, if you like this video, I bet you're going to really love this video. Why don't you check it out, and we'll see you on down the road.